An exciting tale of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She just wanted to disappear from the world. He needed a wife to keep his inheritance. But when secrets from the past begin to bleed, neither will be safe from love. For most of her life, Emily Warren was a nameless face, a presence that went unnoticed even on the busy streets of New York where she grew up. Raised between temporary foster homes and families that changed like the seasons, she learned early that memories were a dangerous luxury. Her mind blocked entire fragments of childhood as a form of survival, leaving only invisible scars and an obsessive need for control over small things. At 26, Emily had built her fortress in the basement of an abandoned commercial building in the city center near Chelsea Market. There, among rusty pipes and damp walls, she had created an underground greenhouse where she cultivated rare orchids and medicinal plants. The smell of moist soil, the predictable cycle of death and rebirth of flowers, the rough textures of stems between her fingers, all of this made more sense than any human conversation she'd ever had. She lived meticulously, almost ritualistically. She woke at 5 in the morning, watered each pot following a sequence that never varied, catalogued the growth of seedlings in notebooks with tiny, precise handwriting. Each gesture was an antidote to the chaos she had known in childhood. She sold her flowers to discreet florists in Soho and the Upper East Side, always in cash, always without questions. She earned enough to pay the rent for the basement, eat bread with coffee, and remain invisible. But destiny has its own way of laughing at human caution. The proposal came on a Tuesday in March, brought by a man in a grey suit who didn't identify himself. He descended the creaking stairs that led to her greenhouse, as if he had known the way for years, stepping carefully between the clay pots arranged on the damp floor. Emily observed him through the foliage, seeing only an elegant figure who didn't belong in that underground place. "Emily Warren?" His voice echoed between the concrete walls, too formal for someone who had just invaded her refuge. She emerged from behind the iron shelves, a small pruning knife in her right hand, eyes suspicious. "Who's asking?" "My name is Dr. Reynolds. I represent the interests of a very influential family in New York." He looked around, registering every detail of the improvised greenhouse with an indecipherable expression. "I need to make you a proposal that could change your life." Emily laughed, a dry sound that didn't reach her eyes. "I have no interest in changing my life." "You haven't heard the proposal yet." He took a thick envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "It's a temporary job, 6 months, well paid, very well paid." "What kind of job?" She kept her distance, the knife still in her hand. "Marriage." The word hung in the damp air of the greenhouse. Emily blinked slowly as if she hadn't understood correctly. "Fake marriage," he clarified, with the naturalness of someone discussing the price of vegetables. "A commercial agreement disguised as marriage. 6 months of public appearances, social events, supervised cohabitation. At the end, an amicable divorce, and you disappear with enough money to start a new life wherever you want." "And why me?" "Because you don't officially exist for New York society. You have no family asking questions, no social circle to interfere, no past that could compromise the operation." He spoke as if he were describing the qualities of a product. "And because you need the money." Emily looked around the greenhouse, seeing the moisture stains on the walls, the leaks dripping into rusty buckets, the plants growing despite the precarious conditions. He was right. She needed the money. The rent debts were accumulating, and the building owner had been threatening to evict her for months. "Who's the groom?" she asked, forcing irony into her voice. "Nathan Blackwood." The name hit her like a punch to the stomach. Even someone who lived on the fringes of society knew Nathan Blackwood. Heir to a technology and communications empire that had begun with a small publishing house in the 80s and expanded to control 3 of the largest television networks in the country, as well as digital platforms, delivery apps, and even a biotechnology company. At 32, he was known both for his business genius and for the emotional coldness that exuded like a second nature. The specialized magazines described him as America's loneliest billionaire. He had never been seen with the same woman twice, avoided the social press, and had a reputation for being ruthless with employees. There were rumors about his troubled childhood, about the mysterious death of a twin sister, about the troubled relationship with his father who had died 2 years earlier. "Why does he need a fake wife?" Emily asked, trying to sound disinterested. "Testamentary issues. His late father left a very specific clause in the will. Nathan will only inherit the most strategic assets of the company if he is legally married and demonstrating marital stability before the board of directors. Dr. Reynolds opened the envelope and showed her a document. The deadline expires in 4 months, hence the urgency. And why doesn't he marry someone from his own circle? Some heiress? Socialite, I don't know. Because he doesn't trust anyone in that environment. He needs someone who accepts the rules of the game without creating romantic expectations or trying to blackmail the family afterward. The man's eyes studied her with clinical coldness. You fit the profile. Emily walked to one of the shelves and pretended to check an orchid that didn't need care. The proposal was absurd, dangerous, completely outside the reality she knew. But the amount mentioned in the document, she had managed to see some numbers when he opened the envelope, was enough to buy her own land, build a real greenhouse, disappear to a place where no one would ever find her. What kind of supervised cohabitation? She asked, still with her back to him. You'll live in the family mansion in Westchester. You'll accompany Nathan to social events, business dinners, some work trips, calculated appearances for the media, enough to convince the board that the marriage is real. And he knows I'm a farce? Of course. It was his idea. Nathan Blackwood doesn't believe in love, Miss Warren. For him, this is simply another business contract. Emily turned slowly, facing the man in the grey suit. And if I accept, when do we start? Immediately. The civil wedding is scheduled for next Thursday. Simple ceremony, only necessary witnesses. The honeymoon will be a weekend in the Berkshires, with discreet photographers to ensure that the images reach the right newspapers. Next Thursday is only 5 days away. That's why the generous offer. He placed the envelope on an improvised table made of crates. I need an answer by tomorrow. After he left, Emily remained alone among her plants, the envelope like a bomb about to explode amid the tranquility of her refuge. She opened it with trembling hands and read each line of the contract, each clause that defined her life for the next 6 months. The payment was divided into 3 parts: a generous entry on the wedding day, a second installment in the 3rd month, and the final amount after the divorce. There was also a clause of absolute confidentiality. Any breach of secrecy would result in criminal prosecution and full return of the amounts received. But what impressed her most were the specific rules about expected behavior. She should undergo a complete transformation, clothes appropriate to the family's status, etiquette lessons with a specialist, professional hairdresser, and makeup for all events. She should learn details about Nathan's business to be able to converse intelligently in public. And above all, she should appear to be in love. The wife must demonstrate genuine affection for the husband in all public appearances, said one of the clauses. Affectionate gestures, complicit glances, and body language that conveys marital intimacy are essential for the credibility of the union. Emily reread this passage several times, feeling something strange move in her stomach. How does someone pretend to be in love with a stranger? How to touch, smile, look into Nathan Blackwood's eyes as if he were the center of her universe. She spent the entire night walking among the pots, watering plants that didn't need water, reorganizing seedlings that were already perfectly arranged. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face on the covers of magazines that she occasionally browsed at the newsstand on the corner. Cold blue eyes like ice, a square jawline always well shaved, dark hair combed back with gel. Handsome in a way that intimidated, with something predatory in his expression that made her look away even through photographs. The next morning, Dr. Reynolds returned punctually at 8 o'clock. I've decided, Emily said before he even finished descending the stairs. I accept. Excellent. The man showed no surprise. A car will come to pick you up at 2 in the afternoon. Bring only essential personal items. Everything else will be provided. Can I ask a question? Go ahead. Why did you specifically choose me? New York has thousands of women without family, without social connections. Dr. Reynolds studied her for a long moment before answering. Because you have exactly the type of beauty that Nathan Blackwood would find attractive. And because there's something in your past that intrigued him when he saw your file. What something? That's something you'll have to ask him. The car that came to pick her up was a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a uniformed driver who didn't say a word during the entire journey to Westchester. Emily watched the urban landscape gradually change, the commercial buildings in the center giving way to residential complexes in the West Zone, then to the mansions and high walls of the noble neighborhoods. The Blackwood property was at the end of a dead-end street, protected by electronic gates and security cameras. The driver announced their arrival through the intercom, and the gates opened silently, revealing an immense garden with century-old trees and a path of Portuguese stones that led to a mansion of contemporary architecture. Emily got out of the car with her only luggage, a worn backpack with 3 changes of clothes and some personal items, and stood in front of the main entrance, feeling like an intruder. The house was all glass and exposed concrete, with straight and minimalist lines that conveyed modernity and coldness at the same time. The front door opened before she could ring the doorbell. Tathan Blackwood was even more imposing in person than in the photographs. Tall, with broad shoulders under a light blue dress shirt, he occupied the doorway as if he owned not just the house, but all the space around it. His blue eyes scanned her from head to toe in a silent, calculating assessment. "You must be Emily." His voice was deeper than she expected, with a New York accent softened by years of international education. "Yes." She forced firmness into her own voice, raising her chin to meet his eyes. "And you are my future husband." He smiled, a movement that didn't reach his eyes, and moved away from the door, gesturing for her to enter. "Future temporary husband," he corrected. "Let's not delude ourselves about the nature of this agreement." The interior of the house was even more intimidating than the exterior. Marble floor, Italian design furniture, contemporary artwork on the walls, a very high ceiling that echoed each step. Emily felt diminished, as if her presence were a stain of ink on a white canvas. "Would you like something to drink?" Nathan asked, walking towards a bar integrated with the living room. "Water, please." He served mineral water in a crystal glass and a double shot of whiskey for himself, precise gestures of someone who was used to serving himself. When he turned to hand her the glass, Emily noticed a thin scar on his left temple, almost imperceptible under his hair. "Sit down," he said, indicating a white leather sofa. "We need to establish some basic rules." Emily settled on the edge of the sofa, her back straight, the backpack in her lap like a shield. Nathan remained standing, leaning against the bar, the calculated distance between them. "First rule, this is a business agreement, nothing more. I don't expect you to develop real feelings for me, and I can guarantee that I won't develop any for you." He took a sip of whiskey, eyes fixed on her. "Second rule, in public, we are a couple in love. In private, we are strangers who share the same roof." "I understand." "Third rule, you don't ask questions about my personal life, my family, or my business beyond what's necessary to maintain appearances. And I don't ask questions about your past." Emily nodded, although she felt a pang of curiosity about what exactly he didn't want her to know. Fourth rule, no physical contact beyond what's necessary for public appearances, no real intimacy, no blurring the boundaries. And if someone asks why we sleep in separate rooms, they won't ask. This wing of the house is private. No one except the closest staff has access. He finished the whiskey in one go. "Your suite is on the 2nd floor, first door on the right. Tomorrow we start with etiquette lessons and shopping for your wardrobe. The wedding is Thursday at 3 in the afternoon. Is that all?" "What more would there be?" Emily stood up, holding the backpack against her chest. "I don't know. Maybe getting to know the person I'm going to marry a little better, even if it's just pretend." Nathan studied her for a moment, and for the first time she saw something different from the usual coldness in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or challenge. "What do you want to know?" "Why me?" "Specifically me." He walked to one of the huge windows that overlooked the garden, hands in his pockets, his profile outlined against the afternoon light. "Because you have my sister's eyes," he said without turning around. "And when I saw your photo, I thought that might make things easier." "What things?" "Pretending that I care about you." The answer hit her like a slap. Emily remained silent, processing the casual cruelty of the statement. He had chosen her because she resembled a dead woman, because it would be easier to look at her and see someone else. "Your sister," she began, "died 15 years ago." Nathan turned, and now his eyes were completely empty. "We don't talk about her." Emily nodded and walked towards the staircase, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back. Halfway up, she stopped and turned. "Nathan, Yes? Just to be clear, I don't intend to fall in love with you either. He smiled again, and this time there was something genuine in the expression, not affection, but a kind of recognition. Good, he said. Then we understand each other. But as she climbed the marble stairs towards what would be her room for the next 6 months, Emily couldn't get out of her mind the way he had said his dead sister's name with such deep pain that it seemed physical, and she couldn't stop thinking about the calculated cruelty of his words, the way he had chosen her as a substitute for a shadow. There was something very wrong in that house. She could feel it in the walls, in the heavy silence of the corridors, in the way the staff avoided her gaze, something beyond a simple business agreement. But the money was already being transferred to her account, and there was no turning back. The suite that would be hers for the next 6 months was larger than the entire greenhouse where she had lived before. Light wood floor, white furniture with gold details, a king-size bed with sheets that seemed never to have been used. The panoramic window gave a view of the back of the property, where there was an infinity pool and a winter garden with plants that she recognized as being very expensive. Emily left the backpack on an armchair and walked to the bathroom. Carrara marble, gold fixtures, a bathtub that could fit 3 people. There were still sealed imported hygiene products, French perfumes, creams that cost more than her monthly rent, all specifically chosen for her, as if someone had studied her preferences, which was impossible, since she herself didn't know what they were. When she returned to the room, she found clothes arranged on the bed. A set of black dress pants and a white silk blouse, low-heeled Italian leather shoes, even black lace lingerie with tags from a designer brand she only knew from billboards. A handwritten note was folded over the pieces. For dinner, 8 o'clock sharp in the main hall. N. His handwriting was angular, precise like everything else in his personality. Emily took the longest bath of her life, letting the hot water erase the tension from her shoulders and the smell of damp earth that she always carried in her hair. When she looked at herself in the fogged mirror, she saw a stranger looking back, someone who could belong in that place, who could be worthy of Nathan Blackwood. The clothes fit perfectly, as if they had been tailored. She tried not to think about how he had managed to guess her exact measurements, how many details about her life he knew that she didn't know he knew. At 8 o'clock sharp, she descended the stairs, trying not to trip in the heels. The main hall was illuminated by a crystal chandelier that projected small rainbows on the white walls. A table for 2 had been prepared at one end, with lit candles and crystal glasses that reflected the light. Nathan was already there, standing by the window, a glass of red wine in his hand. He had exchanged the dress shirt for a black cashmere sweater that accentuated the width of his shoulders. When he saw her descend, his eyes scanned her again, but this time the assessment was different, slower, more detailed. "Much better," he said, with the same naturalness with which he would comment on the weather. "Thank you, I think." Emily approached the table, feeling exposed under his gaze. Nathan pulled out the chair for her to sit, an automatic gesture of chivalry that he probably made without thinking. His fingers brushed her shoulder when he pushed the chair back, a touch so brief that it could have been accidental. "Wine?" he asked, already serving a glass without waiting for an answer. "I don't usually drink." "You'll have to get used to it. In the circles we'll move in, refusing a glass of wine is almost an offense." He sat across from her, raising his own glass in a silent toast. "To the next 6 months." Emily touched her glass to his, the crystalline sound echoing in the spacious hall. The wine was smooth, with a taste of red fruits that she couldn't identify. It probably cost more than her entire food budget for a whole month. "Tomorrow we begin your transformation," Nathan said, cutting a piece of the salmon that had been served by a silent staff member that Emily hadn't even noticed enter. "Hairdresser at 9, personal stylist at 11, etiquette lessons at 2 in the afternoon." Transformation into what exactly? Into someone who could fall in love with me. He chewed slowly, eyes fixed on her. Or at least into someone others would believe fell in love with me. And what's the difference? One involves real feelings, the other is just a very convincing performance. Emily took another sip of wine, feeling the alcohol soften the sharp edges of her anxiety. "And you? Will you also undergo a transformation?" "Into what?" "Into someone who could fall in love with me." Nathan stopped chewing, an eyebrow raised in an expression that could be amusement or irritation. "I don't need to transform into anything. I'm Nathan Blackwood. That's enough. The casual arrogance of the response should have irritated her, but instead Emily found herself studying his face with curiosity. There was something performative even in this arrogance, as if he were playing the role of the cold and powerful billionaire. "Can I ask a question?" she said. "Depends on the question. Why do you really need to get married?" "I mean, what's the problem with letting the board know it's a business arrangement? They're businessmen, they must understand." Nathan drank wine in silence for a long moment, his eyes lost in some point beyond her. When he finally answered, his voice was lower, almost confidential. "Because my father knew me better than I would like to admit. He knew that I would never marry for love. I don't trust anyone enough for that. So he left that clause to force me to at least pretend to be a normal human." He laughed, a sound without humor. "A last test of control, even after death. You didn't get along. My father didn't like anyone, not even his own children. But he hated me especially. Why? Because I survived and Hannah didn't." The name of the dead sister hung between them like a physical presence. Emily saw something move in Nathan's eyes. Pain, guilt, a darkness that he tried to keep hidden behind the mask of coldness. "You're not to blame for her death," Emily said softly. "No?" Nathan finished the wine in one go and refilled the glass. "Interesting. You don't even know how she died and you're already sure I'm not to blame." "Am I?" He studied her for a moment, and she had the strange feeling of being dissected, analyzed in minute parts. "Hannah drowned in the pool here at the house. I was supposed to be watching her, but I was reading a book in my room. When they found her, she had already been dead for almost an hour." "How old were you?" 17. "Then you were a child too. It wasn't your responsibility to take care of her." "It was." His voice became sharp. "She had problems. Depression, psychotic episodes, suicide attempts. I was the only person she trusted. And that day when she needed me most, I was reading Dostoevsky." Emily felt something tighten in her chest. The guilt in his voice was so deep that it became physical, a wound that had never properly healed. "That's why you chose me," she said, finally understanding. "It's not just because I have eyes similar to hers. It's because you want to punish yourself, force yourself to look at someone who reminds you every day." Nathan remained completely still, the wineglass suspended in the air between the table and his lips. For a moment, the mask of control slipped completely, and Emily saw the man behind the performance, someone who carried so much weight that he could barely stand. "You're more perceptive than I expected," he finally said, "and you're more transparent than you think." They finished dinner in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Emily tried to process the information she had just received, to understand the layers of manipulation and self-punishment that Nathan had built around himself. He had chosen her not only for her appearance or humble origins, but because she was the perfect tool for his self-punishment. When the plates were collected by the same silent staff member, Nathan stood up and walked to one of the windows, hands in his pockets, his profile tense against the nightlight from the garden. "Tomorrow you'll meet Mrs. Eleanor, who will give you etiquette lessons," he said, without turning around. "She worked with the British royal family in the 90s. She'll know how to transform you into a convincing lady." "And what if I don't want to be transformed into a lady?" "Then you'll have to pretend very well that you do." He turned and his eyes were again cold, distant. "Because from Thursday on you will be my wife before the entire country, and I don't accept failures." The veiled threat in his voice made Emily shiver, but she forced her spine straight and met his gaze without blinking. "Don't worry," she said, rising from the chair with all the dignity she could muster. "I'm very good at pretending to be what people need me to be." "Are you really?" "I survived 26 years pretending to be invisible. Pretending to be in love with you will be a piece of cake." Nathan smiled, the first genuine expression she had seen in him, and for the first time Emily understood why he was considered one of the most desired men in the country. When he truly smiled, all the calculated coldness disappeared, revealing a devastating beauty that took her breath away. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." Emily went up to her room with the feeling that she had won the first battle in a war she didn't even know she was fighting. But as she took off the expensive clothes and put on an old t-shirt she had brought in her backpack, she couldn't get his smile out of her mind, nor the way his eyes had lit up when she had challenged him. There was danger in that man. Not just the obvious danger of his wealth and power, but something more subtle and devastating. He was the kind of person who could make someone forget who they really were, lose themselves completely in his orbit. And she, who had spent her entire life protecting herself behind invisible walls, felt those walls crack a little more with each exchanged glance. Outside, the rain began to fall on the perfectly manicured gardens of the mansion, and Emily fell asleep to the sound of the drops hitting against the panoramic windows, dreaming of blue eyes that seemed to see through her soul. Emily woke up at 5 in the morning, as always, but this time there were no plants to water, no familiar routine to follow. The luxurious room disoriented her for a few seconds, until reality returned like a cold wave. She was in the Blackwood mansion, less than 3 days away from becoming a stranger's wife. She dressed in her own clothes, faded jeans and a simple t-shirt, and went downstairs to explore the house. The corridors were silent, illuminated only by the soft light entering through the skylights. She walked without a defined direction, observing the abstract paintings on the walls, the bronze sculptures that seemed to be worth more than her entire life. It was when she found the library that her heart raced. It was a circular environment, with mahogany bookshelves that went from floor to ceiling, accessible by a movable golden metal ladder. Thousands of books organized by color and size created a hypnotizing mosaic. In the center, moss-green leather armchairs surrounded a low glass table, on which there was an open book. Emily approached, curious. It was an old edition of Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, with handwritten notes in the margins. The handwriting was the same as on the note Nathan had left in her room the night before. Angular, precise, but with an urgency in the underlined words that revealed contained passion. "You found my refuge." His voice made her jump. Nathan was leaning on the doorframe, wearing only grey sweatpants and a black t-shirt that marked the muscles of his chest. His hair was disheveled, and there was a casual intimacy in his appearance that made him even more dangerous. "I'm sorry, I didn't know it was private." Emily quickly closed the book, as if she had been caught reading his diary. "It's not." He entered the library, walking to one of the bookshelves with the naturalness of someone who knew each title by heart. "You can come here whenever you want. I just didn't expect to find anyone awake so early. I always wake up at 5. Habit from the greenhouse? Habit from life." She moved away from the table, creating distance between them. In foster care, whoever woke up late missed breakfast. Nathan studied her for a moment, and she saw something different in his eyes. Not pity, but a silent understanding that completely disarmed her. "I wake up early too," he said. "Chronic insomnia since I was 17. Since his sister's death, she mentally completed. What do you do when you can't sleep?" "Read." He picked up another book from the shelf, leafing through the pages without really seeing. "Or work. Sometimes I stay by the pool until the sun rises." "The same pool where—" Emily began, but stopped when she saw his expression close. "Yes." The answer came short, definitive. "The same one." Silence extended between them, charged with tension and things unsaid. Emily observed his profile against the morning light coming through the high windows, noticing how he held the book too tightly. His knuckles whitened. "Nathan? Why did you really choose me? And don't give me that story about eyes similar to hers. There's something more." He closed the book and faced her directly, and for the first time since they met, she saw genuine vulnerability in his expression. "Because when I saw your file, I read that you had been found at a bus terminal in New Haven at 5 years old, with no memory of how you had gotten there. No family, no documents, no past." He paused, carefully choosing his words. Hannah also had episodes of amnesia, memory blocks that doctors could never explain. Emily's heart froze. "What are you insinuating?" "Nothing. Maybe it's just coincidence." But the way he said it didn't sound like someone who believed in coincidences. Before she could respond, a middle-aged woman entered the library, wearing an impeccable skirt and blazer set. Grey hair tied in an elegant bun, erect posture, blue eyes that assessed Emily from head to toe in a fraction of a second. "Mrs. Eleanor?" Nathan immediately composed himself, returning to the mask of controlled coldness. "This is Emily, my fiancée." "I see we have a lot of work ahead of us," the woman said, with an accent that mixed New York elegance and European education. "Good morning, dear. I'm Eleanor Montgomery, your etiquette instructor." Emily felt like she was being analyzed as a renovation project. "Good morning. Let's start with posture. Chin up, shoulders back. Imagine there's an invisible thread pulling the top of your head. Mrs. Eleanor circled Emily like a general inspecting troops. Now walk to the window. The next few minutes were torturous. Each step, each gesture, each facial expression was dissected and corrected. Emily learned that there was a correct way to sit, legs together, slightly inclined to the side, to greet people, firm but not aggressive handshake, smile that reached the eyes, even to hold a wine glass, by the stem, never by the bowl. Nathan watched everything leaning against a bookshelf, arms crossed, an indecipherable expression on his face. Sometimes Emily caught him observing not her hands or posture, but her lips when she spoke, or the curve of her neck when she turned. "Now, let's practice social conversation," Mrs. Eleanor announced. "Nathan, be kind and play the role of a guest at a business dinner." He approached, extending his hand in a formal greeting. When his fingers touched hers, Emily felt an electric current run up her arm. Nathan felt it too. She saw it in his eyes, in the way he hesitated for a fraction of a second before releasing her hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Blackwood," he said, and there was something in the way he pronounced the surname that made her stomach contract. "The pleasure is mine," she responded, forcing naturalness into her voice. "And how did you two meet?" he asked, following the script. "Through mutual friends," Emily answered as they had rehearsed. "Nathan was looking for someone to take care of the company gardens, and I had just graduated in botany." "Interesting. And when did you realize it was love?" The question caught Emily off guard. They hadn't rehearsed this part. She looked into Nathan's blue eyes, searching for a clue on how to respond, and saw something burning there that made her heart race. "At first sight," she heard herself say, her voice huskier than intended. "I was watering the orchids in his office, and when I turned around he was there watching me. It was as if the world stopped." Nathan remained completely still, eyes fixed on hers. For a moment Mrs. Eleanor and the library disappeared, and there were only the two of them, lost in a lie that sounded dangerously like truth. "And you, Nathan?" Mrs. Eleanor asked. "When did you know she was special?" "When she told me she wasn't interested," he answered, without breaking eye contact with Emily. "Every woman I meet wants something from me. Money, status, access. But Emily looked at me as if I were just another client. It was refreshing." "Perfect." Mrs. Eleanor clapped her hands. "You have natural chemistry. This will greatly facilitate public appearances." Natural chemistry. The words echoed in Emily's mind for the rest of the morning, as she was dragged from one appointment to another. First the hairdresser, a dramatic man named Andrew, who cut 15 centimeters of her hair and dyed it a darker brown, with golden highlights that framed her face. Then the manicure, the waxing, the makeup test. With each transformation, she moved further away from the woman she knew in the mirror. The invisible florist with dirty clothes and calloused hands was disappearing, replaced by someone who could be on the cover of a magazine. "You look beautiful," said Carly, the personal stylist, while adjusting a navy blue dress that cost more than the annual rent of the greenhouse. "Nathan has good taste in women. Was it he who chose the clothes?" "Every piece. He said he wanted something elegant but not flashy, sophisticated but not ostentatious." Carly smiled with complicity. "It's rare to find a man who understands that true elegance lies in simplicity." Emily looked at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back. The dress marked her waist and enhanced the color of her eyes. The shoes made her a few inches taller. The new hair framed her face in a soft and feminine way. She looked worthy of Nathan Blackwood. "How long have you been together?" Carly asked, while choosing accessories. "A few months," Emily responded automatically. "And you're already getting married? How romantic. That must be love indeed." Emily forced a smile, but inside she felt something strange stirring. It wasn't exactly discomfort with the lie. She had lied about so many things in life that it had become natural. It was something else, more dangerous. It was the growing desire for the lie to be true. When she returned to the mansion in the late afternoon, she found Nathan in the office, surrounded by papers and speaking on the phone in a mixture of English and what sounded like French. He was in a dark suit, hair combed back, completely immersed in the corporate world that intimidated her. She knocked lightly on the door and he looked up, stopping in the middle of a sentence in French. His expression changed completely when he saw her. Surprise, admiration, and something darker that made her stomach contract. "I'll call you back," he said to the phone, hanging up without taking his eyes off her. "What do you think?" Emily asked, doing a small turn to show the result of the transformation. Nathan stood up slowly, circling the desk with calculated predatory movements. He stopped a few inches from her, so close that she could smell the masculine perfume he wore, something woody with notes of spices. "Do you think I look presentable?" she asked, forcing lightness into her voice. "Presentable?" He chuckled, a sound that reverberated in her chest. "Emily, you look devastating." The word hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings. Devastating. Not beautiful, not elegant, not presentable. Devastating. Like something that could destroy, cause irreparable damage. "It's good to know the investment was worth it," she stammered. "It was." He raised his hand, and for a moment she thought he was going to touch her, but he merely adjusted a lock of hair that had escaped from the hairstyle. The touch was so light it could have been imagined, but it left her skin on fire. "Tomorrow is the big day. The wedding. The wedding," he repeated, but the way he said it sounded less like confirmation and more like a promise, or a threat. "Nathan, she began, but didn't know how to finish the sentence. What could she say? That she was beginning to blur the boundaries between performance and reality? That each of his glances made her forget that this was just a contract? What is it? Nothing. Just thank you for all this." She vaguely gestured to herself. "I know I'm an investment, but still, you're not an investment, Emily." The intensity in his voice made her raise her eyes, finding an expression she couldn't decipher. "No? You're—" He hesitated, as if carefully choosing his words. "You're more complicated than I expected." "Complicated how?" "Complicated like someone who makes me forget the rules I established." Her heart raced. "What rules?" "The rule of not caring about you, the rule of maintaining emotional distance, the rule of not thinking about what it would be like to really kiss you, not just for the cameras." The air between them became charged, electric. Emily felt as if she were on the edge of a precipice, knowing that one more step would be fatal, but unable to retreat. "Nathan, I know." He abruptly moved away, going back behind the desk as if she were radioactive. "I know this isn't part of the agreement, but I needed you to know." "Why?" "Because tomorrow, when I kiss you at the altar, it won't be just for appearances. And I want you to be prepared for that." Before she could respond, he sat back down and picked up the phone, effectively ending the conversation. Emily stood for a few seconds, her heart beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it, before leaving the office on trembling legs. She spent the entire night awake, alternating between the desire to flee from that house and the burning curiosity to discover what Nathan Blackwood's kiss would be like. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of blue eyes and hands that touched her, with a gentleness that contrasted with the hardness of his words. The morning of the wedding dawned cloudy, with the threat of rain that seemed to mirror Emily's emotional state. She was awakened at 7 by a team of professionals, hairdresser, makeup artist, manicurist, who transformed her room into a luxurious version of a beauty salon. "Nervous?" asked Andrew, while securing her hair in an elegant low bun. "A little," she lied. She was terrified. "It's normal. All brides get nervous. But you're making the right choice. Nathan Blackwood is a good catch." If only he knew, Emily thought bitterly. The wedding dress was hanging in the closet like a silent accusation. It wasn't the traditional puffy white dress, but a piece of cream silk, straight and elegant cut that reached her knees. Sophisticated, discreet, perfect for a civil wedding that should appear intimate, but not overly romantic. When she finally dressed, Emily barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed to belong to that world of luxury and elegance. She seemed like someone who could make Nathan Blackwood really fall in love. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she said, expecting it to be one of the staff. But it was Nathan. He entered wearing an impeccably cut dark grey suit, a navy blue tie that enhanced the color of his eyes, hair combed back with gel. He looked like a prince out of a fairy tale, if fairy tale princes had eyes that promised sin and salvation in equal measure. "You look," he began, but didn't finish the sentence. "Presentable," she tried to joke, but her voice came out trembling. "Perfect." The word came out low, almost a whisper. "Absolutely perfect." He approached, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. "This belonged to my grandmother." Inside the box was an engagement ring that took her breath away. A medium-sized solitaire diamond, classic cut, set in a white gold band. Simple, elegant, timeless. "Nathan, I can't accept this. It's a family heirloom." "It's just borrowed," he said, taking the ring from the box, "for the duration of our agreement." He took her left hand carefully, as if he were handling porcelain, and slid the ring onto her ring finger. The fit was perfect, as if it had been made specifically for her. "How did you know the size?" she asked, admiring how the diamond caught the light. "I pay attention to details." His finger still held her hand, his thumb tracing small circles on the sensitive skin of her wrist. "I always have." "Nathan," she began, but he shook his head. "No. Don't say anything that might ruin this moment." He raised her hand to his lips and placed a soft kiss on her knuckles, just above the ring. "Today, you are my bride. Let me pretend that means something." The kiss was so intimate, so tender, that Emily felt tears sting her eyes. She wanted to say that it meant something to her too, that she was beginning to forget that this was just a role, but the words remained stuck in her throat. "It's time," he said, offering his arm. The courthouse was in a noble region of New York, in a historic building with preserved colonial architecture. There were only a few people present, the necessary witnesses, Dr. Reynolds, and a discreet photographer that Nathan had hired to document the event for the press. The ceremony was quick, functional, without any obvious romanticism. But when it came time for the vows, something changed in the air around them. "Nathan Blackwood," said the judge, "do you take Emily Warren as your lawful wife to love and respect her, in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness, until death do you part?" Nathan looked directly into her eyes when he answered, "I do." But the way he said it, with an intensity that went beyond the words, made Emily's heart race. "Emily Warren, do you take Nathan Blackwood as your lawful husband, to love and respect him, in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness, until death do you part?" She should have responded automatically, mechanically. It was just a performance, after all. But when she looked into Nathan's blue eyes, she saw something burning there that made her completely forget the script. "I do," she said, and her voice sounded like a real promise. "You may exchange the rings." Nathan took the white gold wedding band, matching the engagement ring, and slid it onto her finger, with slow and deliberate movements. His hands trembled slightly, and she realized that he was as affected by this moment as she was. When it was her turn, Emily took the male band, wider, also in white gold, and placed it on Nathan's finger. His fingers were long, elegant, with almost imperceptible calluses that revealed he hadn't always lived in luxury. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the judge smiled. "The groom may kiss the bride." This was the moment Emily most feared and most desired. Nathan approached slowly, his hands rising to hold her face with a delicacy that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. "Remember what I told you yesterday," he murmured, too low for others to hear. She nodded, unable to speak. "Then, be prepared." The kiss began soft, almost hesitant, lips touching in a caress that could have been chaste. But then something exploded between them. Hunger, desperation, months of repressed sexual tension, and the kiss deepened. Nathan pulled her closer, one hand on the back of her neck, the other on her waist, as if he wanted to fuse her to his own body. Emily heard herself moaning softly, her arms rising to entwine around his neck, completely forgetting where they were or who might be watching. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Nathan's eyes had an almost wild intensity, and Emily was sure that hers had the same expression. "Congratulations to the newlyweds," said the judge, breaking the trance they had fallen into. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of greetings, photos, toasts with champagne that Emily barely touched. They went to an elegant restaurant in Central Park South, where Nathan had reserved a private room for a small celebration with the company's closest employees. Throughout the party, he didn't leave her side, a hand always on her back, on her shoulders, on her waist. Touches that seemed possessive, marking territory, but at the same time were incredibly gentle. And whenever someone approached to congratulate them, he introduced her with a pride that sounded genuine. "My wife, Emily." Each time he said that word, wife, something lit up in her chest. It was dangerous, it was stupid, but she was beginning to like the sound. When they finally returned to the mansion, it was already night. The driver dropped them off at the main entrance, and they walked in silence through the garden illuminated by discreet lanterns. Emily held the hem of the dress to avoid tripping in the high-heeled shoes, but was well aware of the masculine presence at her side. "Tired?" Nathan asked when they reached the door. "A little." In fact, she was electrified, every nerve in her body on maximum alert. It was intense. The kiss? The direct question caught her off guard. Among other things, he stopped at the threshold of the door, turning to face her. The golden light from the entrance created interesting shadows on his face, accentuating the strong line of his jaw, the sensual curve of his lips. "Emily, I need you to understand something." "What? What happened today?" "The kiss. The way I felt when you said 'I do,' that wasn't in the script." Her heart raced. "I know. You know. Because for me it wasn't either." They stood facing each other, the air between them charged with tension and dangerous possibilities. Emily could see the internal struggle in his eyes. Desire against control, need against prudence. "This complicates things," he finally said. "Very much. Do you still want to continue with the agreement?" The question surprised her. She had expected him to dismiss her, to consider their mutual attraction a problem to be eliminated. Instead, he was giving her the choice. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. "No." The answer came quickly, definitive. "But I want you to know what you're getting into. Because after today, after that kiss, I don't know if I can maintain the rules we established." "Which rules specifically?" "The rule of not touching you beyond what's necessary. The rule of maintaining emotional distance." He took a step closer, and she could feel the heat emanating from his body. "The rule of not desiring you in every possible way." Emily's blood boiled. "And if I say I don't want to follow those rules anymore either?" His eyes darkened. "Then we're in a lot of trouble." "Why?" "Because when I finally really touch you, Emily, it won't be just for 6 months. And it won't be just physical." He raised his hand, tracing the line of her jaw with the back of his fingers. "It will be forever. And it will be everything." The promise or threat hung between them like a bridge that once crossed would have no return. Emily knew she should retreat, maintain the safety of emotional distance. But instead, she heard herself saying, "Then maybe it's time to break all the rules." Nathan smiled, a dangerous smile full of dark promises, and opened the door of the mansion. "Welcome to the marriage, Mrs. Blackwood." And as she entered, Emily knew there was no turning back. She had married Nathan Blackwood for money, but was beginning to suspect that the real price would be much higher than she had imagined. It would be her own heart. The first night as Nathan Blackwood's wife was the longest of Emily's life. They climbed the marble stairs in loaded silence, each step echoing in the wide space of the mansion. When they reached the corridor that led to the bedrooms, Nathan stopped in front of her door, hands in his pockets, an indecipherable expression on his face. "Good night, Emily." His voice was huskier than normal. "Good night." She hesitated with her hand on the doorknob. "Nathan." "Yes. Thank you. For today. For everything being perfect." He took a step closer, so close that she could see the small wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, the almost imperceptible movement of his throat when he swallowed hard. "For me, it was perfect too." He raised his hand, lightly tracing the line of her face from the jaw to the temple. Perfectly dangerous. The touch sent waves of heat through her body. "Why dangerous?" "Because it makes me want things I can't have." "Like what?" His eyes darkened. "Like entering that room with you. Like taking off that dress with my own hands. Like finding out if you moan my name when I touch you right." Emily's blood boiled, an intense pulsation spreading throughout her entire body. "Nathan, but I won't do that." He abruptly moved away, creating distance between them. "Because when I finally do, I want it to be because you desire me as much as I desire you. Not because of a contract, not out of gratitude, but because you can't stay away from me anymore." "And if I already can't?" The question escaped before she could contain it. Nathan remained completely still, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that became physical. "Don't play with this, Emily." "I'm not playing." "Then tell me something." He approached again, cornering her against the door, his hands supported on the wood on either side of her head. "When you close your eyes at night, who do you think about?" Her heart raced. "Nathan, answer me. You." The confession came out in a whisper. "Always you." He closed his eyes as if feeling physical pain. "You're going to kill me." "Why?" "Because I spend nights awake imagining you on the other side of this wall. Imagining what it would be like to wake up with you in my arms. Imagining what it would be like to hear you say my name not during a performance, but because you're lost in pleasure." Her breathing became irregular. "And why don't you come here to find out? Because there are still things you don't know about me. About this family, about why you're really here." He opened his eyes, and there was a darkness there that made her shiver. "And when you find out, you may not want to touch me anymore." Before she could ask what he was referring to, Nathan moved away and walked quickly to his own room, leaving her alone in the corridor with more questions than answers. Emily entered the room on trembling legs, closing the door and leaning her back against it. The wedding dress suddenly seemed too tight, the air in the room insufficient. She undressed slowly, exchanging the elegant silk for a simple nightgown, but couldn't get his words out of her mind. "There are still things you don't know about me." What things? What secrets did Nathan hide beyond the traumatic death of his sister? She spent hours lying in bed, looking at the ceiling, listening to the night sounds of the mansion. Around 3 in the morning, she heard footsteps in the corridor, slow, hesitant. They stopped in front of her door for a long moment, and she held her breath, waiting. But after a few minutes, the footsteps moved away. Nathan couldn't sleep either. The next morning, she went down for breakfast and found him on the veranda reading newspapers while drinking black coffee. He was wearing a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing muscular forearms and a casual elegance that made her forget to breathe. "Good morning, husband," she said, testing how the word sounded. He looked up from the newspaper, and she saw something move in his expression. Satisfaction, possessiveness, barely contained desire. "Good morning, wife." The way he said it made her stomach contract. "Did you sleep well?" "Not really. And you?" "Me neither." He folded the newspaper and stood up, approaching to place a light kiss on her temple. "But we'll have to get used to it. Tonight we have our first event as a couple." "What event?" "Charity gala at New York Hospital. 2,000 guests, press, New York Society." He poured coffee into a porcelain cup and offered it to her. "Our official debut as the newly married Blackwoods." Emily's stomach tightened. "I don't know if I'm ready for something so big." "You are." He sat back down, but kept his eyes fixed on her. "Mrs. Eleanor said you're an exceptional student, and I'll be by your side the whole time." "Nathan, can I ask a question?" "Always." "Why do you really need this marriage to seem real? I mean, beyond the issue of the will. Why is it so important that people believe we're in love?" He remained silent for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the glass table. "Because there are people on the board who want to see me fail, who expected that I wouldn't be able to fulfill the requirements of the will in order to take control of the company." "What people?" "My uncle, Richard Blackwood, my father's younger brother, always thought he should have inherited everything instead of me." Nathan drank coffee, his jaw tense. "He has allies on the board, investors who would prefer a more traditional management. And if they discover our marriage is fake, then I lose everything. The company, the properties, control of the investment funds." He looked at her directly. "And you lose the protection my name offers." "Protection against what?" "Against people who might want to hurt you to get to me." The answer chilled her. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying that from now on, you're a Blackwood, and that comes with consequences that go far beyond what you imagined when you signed the contract." Emily felt a chill down her spine. Each conversation with Nathan revealed new layers of complexity, new dangers she hadn't considered. She had thought that the biggest risk would be falling in love with him. Apparently, there were much more concrete risks involved. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because if I had, you would have run away." He stood up, circling the table to stand beside her. "And I couldn't let you run away." "Because of the agreement?" "No." He held her face between his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Because you're the first person in 15 years who makes me feel something beyond anger and guilt." The kiss he placed on her lips was different from the previous one, softer, more intimate, loaded with a vulnerability that completely disarmed her. When they separated, both were breathless. "I'll send Carly to come this afternoon to choose your dress for the gala," he murmured against her lips. "Something that makes all men envy me and all women hate you." Nathan. Yes. I'm also beginning to feel things I shouldn't. He smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. Good, because it means we're fucked together. The rest of the morning passed in frantic preparation. Carly arrived with a team of assistants carrying dozens of dresses, shoes, jewelry, and accessories. Emily's room was transformed into a temporary atelier with three-sided mirrors and a small improvised platform. For a gala of this importance, we need something impactful, Carly explained, organizing the dresses by color. Elegant but sensual, sophisticated but memorable. Emily tried on dress after dress, navy blue, black, red, emerald green, while Carly made adjustments and notes. But it was when she put on a specific model that something changed in the air. It was a long liquid silk dress in champagne color, with a deep V neckline and an almost completely open back. The skirt flowed like water around her legs, and the color made her skin look golden. It was daring without being vulgar, elegant without being conservative. "That one," said a familiar voice from the door. Emily turned and saw Nathan leaning on the doorframe, his eyes traveling every inch of her body, with an admiration that bordered on adoration. "Definitely that one," he repeated, entering the room. "Isn't it too revealing?" Emily asked, looking at herself in the mirror. "It's perfect." He approached from behind, his hands resting lightly on her waist. "For you're perfect." In the mirror, they looked like a real couple, he elegant and protective, she radiant and confident. For a moment, Emily managed to forget that all of this was a farce. "The jewelry," Carly said, opening a velvet box. "How about these diamond earrings and this necklace?" But Nathan shook his head. "No, she'll wear the family jewels." "Nathan, I can't," Emily began. "You can and you will." He was already leaving the room. "Wait here." He returned a few minutes later, carrying an ancient carved wooden box. When he opened it, Emily caught her breath. Inside was a set of pearl and diamond necklace and earrings that looked like they had come from a museum. "They belonged to my great-grandmother," Nathan explained, taking the necklace from the box. "She wore them at her debutante ball in 1952. Nathan, this must be worth a fortune. And you are my wife. You have the right to wear them." He positioned himself behind her, placing the necklace around her neck. His fingers brushed the sensitive skin of her nape when he closed the clasp, sending shivers throughout her body. There. The result was devastating. The jewels completed the transformation, making her look like a princess out of a fairy tale, but a dangerous princess who knew the power of her own beauty. "My God," Carly murmured, "you two are going to stop traffic." That night, as she prepared for the gala, Emily couldn't contain her nerves. It was one thing to pretend to be elegant in front of a mirror. Another entirely different thing was to face 2,000 members of New York high society who would analyze her under a magnifying glass. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said, expecting it to be one of the staff. But it was Nathan again, and the sight of him left her momentarily speechless. He was wearing an impeccably cut tuxedo, the bow tie perfectly aligned, hair combed back with gel. He looked like he had stepped out of the pages of a men's fashion magazine. "Ready?" he asked. "I think so." She picked up the silver clutch that Carly had chosen. "What if I mess up? What if they say I'm a fraud?" Nathan approached, holding her hands in his. "Emily, look at me." She raised her eyes, finding the iron determination in the intense blue of his. "You are not a fraud. You are intelligent, beautiful, elegant, and strong. Stronger than any of those women we'll meet tonight." He lightly kissed her knuckles. "And if anyone dares to question you, they'll have to deal with me." The fierce protection in his voice warmed her inside. "Thank you. Ready to meet my family?" "Your family will be there." "Unfortunately." His expression hardened. "My Uncle Richard and his wife, my cousins, all very eager to meet the woman who managed to tame Nathan Blackwood. And if they don't like me?" "Even better. Means you're doing something right." The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden lights on the ornate walls. Round tables with white flower arrangements occupied the central space, and a stage was set up at one end for the charity auctions. When Nathan and Emily entered the ballroom, a subtle silence spread through the crowd. Not a complete silence, but that almost imperceptible pause that happens when something, or someone, catches attention. They walked through the entrance with the naturalness of those who belonged to that world. Nathan, with a possessive hand on Emily's bare back, she with a serene smile that Mrs. Eleanor had taught, warm but not desperate for approval. "Nathan," a blonde middle-aged woman approached, arms extended in an effusive greeting. "How wonderful to see you here." "Marianne," Nathan replied with polite coldness. "How are you?" "Well, dear. Very well. And this must be the famous wife." The woman turned to Emily with calculating eyes that analyzed her from head to toe. "Emily, isn't it? I heard you two met in a very romantic way." "Marianne Castle," Nathan made the introductions without enthusiasm. "Emily, my wife." "Pleasure to meet you," Emily said, extending her hand with the firm handshake she had learned. "The pleasure is mine, dear. Tell me, how did you meet our Nathan? He has always been so reserved about his personal life." "Through work," Emily answered according to the rehearsed script. "I took care of the gardens at the company headquarters." "How interesting, a florist." The woman smiled, but there was venom in the expression. "How exotic." "Exotic is an interesting word," Nathan intervened, his voice carrying a subtle warning. "I would say unique. Emily has an understanding of natural beauty that is rare these days." Of course," Marianne laughed, a forced sound. "And when did you realize it was love?" Emily felt Nathan tense beside her, but before he could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. "This must be the new Mrs. Blackwood." They turned to find a man in his 60s approaching, accompanied by an elegant woman with grey hair. There was an undeniable resemblance between him and Nathan. The same height, the same bone structure, the same blue eyes. But where Nathan had controlled intensity, this man emanated genuine coldness. "Uncle Richard," Nathan said, his voice neutral but tense. "Nathan, congratulations on the wedding. We were all surprised by the speed of things." Richard Blackwood extended his hand to Emily, but his eyes studied her like an entomologist would study an insect. "Richard Blackwood, Nathan's uncle, and this is my wife, Catherine." "Emily," she responded, maintaining her composure despite the obvious discomfort in the situation. "Emily, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your maiden name." "Warren," Nathan answered before she could speak. "Emily Warren." "Warren?" Richard repeated slowly. "Interesting name. Not common in New York." "My family isn't from New York," Emily said, feeling a strange chill down her spine. "Oh no? Where from then?" "From upstate." She kept the answer vague, but noticed how Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. "Which region upstate?" "Richard," Nathan intervened, his voice loaded with warning. "I don't think an interrogation is appropriate at a party." Of course. Just family curiosity." Richard smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's natural for us to want to get to know better the woman who won our Nathan's heart, especially considering the unique circumstances of the will," Catherine added, speaking for the first time. The silence that followed was loaded with tension. Emily felt the underground currents of hostility and power circulating around her, but didn't completely understand the rules of the game. "The circumstances of my marriage are not a subject for public discussion," Nathan said, his voice low but lethal. "I hope that's clear." "Naturally," Richard agreed, but there was triumph in his eyes. "Well, let's leave you to enjoy the party. I'm sure we'll have many opportunities to talk in the coming months." When they moved away, Emily felt Nathan relax slightly beside her. "That was a test," she murmured. "It was, and you did well." He took 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter. "But they'll continue investigating. Richard doesn't give up easily." "Investigating what?" "You. Your origin, your family, your past." He drank champagne, his eyes scanning the room. "He's looking for something he can use against us. And if he finds it, he won't find it." Nathan looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. "I made sure of that." Before she could ask what exactly he had done, the music decreased and a master of ceremonies went up on stage to announce the beginning of the charity auction. Nathan guided her to a table near the stage, where they were received by other couples from high society. During the next hour, Emily watched Nathan navigate the social environment with the skill of an experienced politician. He greeted people whose names she recognized from newspapers, participated in conversations about business that moved millions, made bids in the auction with the naturalness of someone who bought artwork as others bought bread. And the whole time he maintained physical contact with her, a hand on her shoulder, fingers intertwined, his thumb tracing small circles on the sensitive skin of her wrist, touches that seemed possessive to those observing, but that she knew were also comforting, reminding her that she wasn't alone in that strange world. "He bid $200,000 for the sculpture," announced the auctioneer, making the crowd applaud. "Nathan," Emily murmured, "you just paid $200,000 for a sculpture." "It's for charity," he responded casually. "And besides, it will look perfect in the Winter Garden." The naturalness with which he spoke about sums that represented several years of salary brutally reminded her of the difference between their worlds. She was pretending to belong in that place, but Nathan had been born into it. "Would you like to dance?" he asked when the orchestra began to play a slow song. "Here? In front of everyone?" "Especially in front of everyone." He stood up, offering his hand. "Remember that we're a couple in love." The dance floor was crowded with elegant couples who moved with the grace of those who had learned to dance in private lessons since childhood. Emily let Nathan guide her, surprised by the naturalness with which their bodies fit together. "You dance well," she commented. "Mandatory lessons from 6 to 18 years old." He spun her gently, bringing her back closer to him. Hannah hated dance lessons, said they were outdated and sexist. It was the first time he had spontaneously mentioned his dead sister. Was she rebellious? Hannah was complicated. Nathan remained silent for a moment, lost in memories. Too intelligent for her own good, questioned everything, challenged everyone. My father didn't know how to deal with her. And you? I understood her. We were twins, after all. I knew when she was sad, even if she was smiling, knew when she was planning something stupid, knew when... He stopped, his jaw contracting. When what? When she was thinking of hurting herself. The confession came out low, almost inaudible under the music, but hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. "Nathan, let's talk about something else," he said abruptly. "This is neither the time nor the place." But even as they continued dancing, Emily could feel the tension in his body, the way his muscles contracted whenever someone mentioned family or the past. There was so much pain hidden behind the mask of control that she felt like hugging him and promising that everything would be okay, which was dangerous because it meant she was caring more than she should. When the music ended, they returned to the table, but Emily noticed that Nathan seemed restless, his eyes constantly scanning the room as if he were looking for something or someone. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Yes. Just..." He hesitated. "I think it's better if we leave. We've appeared enough for one night." "Of course." But when they stood up to leave, Richard Blackwood appeared again, this time with a man Emily didn't recognize. "Leaving so early?" Richard asked. "The night has barely begun." "Emily is tired," Nathan responded curtly. Of course. Before you go, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Martinez. He's an old family friend." The man introduced was short and robust, with grey hair and thick glasses. There was something familiar about his face that Emily couldn't identify. "Dr. Martinez," Nathan greeted with obvious coldness. "Nathan, my boy. And this must be your new wife." The man extended his hand to Emily, but his eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel like a laboratory specimen. "Emily Warren, isn't it?" "Yes," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. "Warren," he repeated, in the same way Richard had done. "Very interesting name. Very familiar." "Familiar how?" Nathan asked, and there was a lethal tension in his voice. "Oh, probably just coincidence. But I worked with an Iris Warren many years ago. Beautiful woman, dark hair, green eyes, very similar to..." He looked directly at Emily. "Very similar to you, actually." Emily's blood froze. Iris Warren. The name echoed in her mind like a distant bell, awakening fragments of memories she didn't know she possessed. A dark-haired woman singing a lullaby, gentle hands arranging her hair, the smell of roses. "Interesting," Nathan said, but his voice sounded strange. "What kind of work?" "Medical. I was a psychiatrist at the St. Raphael Institute in the 90s. Iris was my patient for a time." St. Raphael Institute. Emily felt as if she were falling into a deep well. Fragments of images formed in her mind. White corridors, the smell of disinfectant, voices whispering about a girl who had lost her mother. "Emily," Nathan's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay?" She blinked, realizing she was trembling. I need some air." "Of course, darling." Nathan held her by the arm, firm but gentle. If you'll excuse us, gentlemen." He guided her quickly through the ballroom to a balcony that overlooked the hotel garden. The fresh night air helped her reorient herself, but her heart was still racing. "Emily, look at me." Nathan held her face between his hands. "You're with me. You're safe." "Iris Warren," she whispered. He said, "Iris Warren." "I heard." "Nathan, that name. It's familiar. I remember something, but I don't know what." His eyes darkened. "What do you remember?" "A woman singing, smell of roses, hands arranging my hair." Tears began to form in her eyes. And then, nothing. Just emptiness. Nathan remained silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with something she couldn't identify. "Emily, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I knew. About Iris Warren. About the St. Raphael Institute." Her world stopped. "What are you saying?" "When I had your past investigated before making the proposal, I discovered that Iris Warren was admitted to the St. Raphael Institute in 1995. She had a daughter who was placed for adoption when she was 5 years old." "A daughter?" The words came out in a whisper. "You, Emily. Iris Warren was your mother." The revelation hit her like lightning. Her legs failed, and Nathan held her, pulling her against his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice broken. "Because I didn't want you to be hurt by something that might not have a solution." "And what else do you know? What else have you hidden from me?" Nathan hesitated, and she saw guilt and something like fear in his eyes. "Iris Warren wasn't admitted for common psychiatric problems, Emily. She was subjected to experimental treatments, memory suppression techniques." "What?" "And the doctor responsible for these treatments was my father." Emily's world completely collapsed. Nathan, the man she was falling in love with, was the son of the man who had destroyed her mother. "Take me home," she whispered. "Emily? Now, Nathan, take me home now." The journey back to the mansion was made in absolute silence. Emily looked out the window, seeing the city lights pass without really registering anything. Her mind was in chaos, trying to process everything she had discovered. When they arrived at the mansion, she went straight up to her room, ignoring Nathan's calls. She closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing the tears to fall. Her mother had been a patient of Nathan's father, had been subjected to treatments that erased her memories, and Nathan knew all this when he chose her. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Emily, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she said through the door. "You used me. You brought me here knowing that my mother had been a victim of your family. It wasn't like that. Go away, Nathan." Silence from the other side of the door. Then, his voice low and broken, "I didn't want you to find out this way. But you need to know one thing. I chose you not because of what my father did to your mother. I chose you because from the moment I saw your photo, I knew you were the person who could save me." "Save you from what?" "From guilt, from loneliness, from the emptiness I've carried since Hannah died." Emily closed her eyes, feeling tears stream down her face. "And what do you think I carry, Nathan? What do you think it's like to grow up without memories, without identity, without knowing who you really are? I know you carry pain, and I know part of that pain is my fault, my family's fault. But Emily," his voice faltered, "you're the first person in 15 years who makes me want to be better than I am." The words pierced the door, and her heart like knives. Because even knowing that he had lied, even knowing that there were secrets between them, she still felt something powerful and frightening when she heard his voice. "I need time," she finally said. "How much time?" "I don't know." More silence. Then, his footsteps moving away down the corridor. Emily took off the gala dress and the family jewels, exchanging everything for a simple t-shirt. But as she brushed her hair in front of the mirror, she couldn't stop thinking about the genuine pain in Nathan's voice. He had lied to her, had used her traumatic past for his own ends. But he had also tried to protect her, had shown genuine care, had fallen in love with her. Was it possible to love someone and betray them at the same time? Outside it began to rain, heavy drops hitting the windows of the mansion, and somewhere in those silent corridors, Nathan Blackwood was awake, carrying his own secrets and regrets. But Emily couldn't decide whether she wanted to comfort him or hate him. Maybe both. Emily woke up the next morning with eyes swollen from crying and an iron determination burning in her chest. If Nathan Blackwood knew secrets about her past, she would discover everything on her own, with or without his help. She quickly dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, tied her hair in a ponytail, and quietly descended the stairs. The mansion was quiet, only the distant sound of voices in the kitchen indicating that the staff had already begun their morning activities. She avoided the social area, heading directly to Nathan's office. The door was ajar, but the room empty. He had probably already left for work, fleeing from the inevitable confrontation that awaited them. The computer was turned off, but there was an open folder on the desk as if it had been purposely left there. Emily approached, her heart racing when she read the name on the label. Iris Warren, St. Raphael Institute, 1995-1998. Inside the folder were dozens of documents, medical records, session reports, photographs, correspondence. Her hands trembled when she picked up the first photo. A dark-haired woman with green eyes identical to hers, but with a lost, empty expression that froze her blood. Iris Warren, her mother. Emily leafed through the documents with growing horror. Detailed reports about memory suppression procedures, cognitive reconfiguration therapy, personality reconstruction experiments. And on all the records, the signature of the responsible physician, Dr. William Blackwood. Nathan's father had treated her mother like a laboratory guinea pig. Found what you were looking for? Nathan's voice made her jump. He was standing at the door, still wearing the suit from the night before, his face tired and his hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. You left this here for me to find, she said. It wasn't a question. I did. He entered the office, closing the door behind him. Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. And what is the truth, Nathan? That your father was a monster who destroyed human minds for scientific pleasure? Not for pleasure. Nathan approached but maintained a respectful distance. For greed. The St. Raphael Institute developed experimental memory manipulation techniques for government contractors. Political dissidents, inconvenient witnesses, anyone who needed to be readjusted. Emily felt nausea rise in her throat. And my mother. Your mother worked as a nurse at the institute. She discovered what was happening and threatened to expose everything. Nathan picked up another document from the folder. She was forcibly admitted under the allegation of a psychotic break. Subjected to 3 years of treatments that almost completely erased her original personality. 3 years? Emily looked at the dates on the reports. I was born in 1996. She was pregnant during the treatments. Yes, and according to the records, no one knew who the child's father was. You. Iris didn't remember anything about her life before being admitted. Tears began to stream down Emily's face. Her mother had suffered psychological torture while pregnant with her. She had carried a child whose father she couldn't remember, in an environment of medical horror. What happened after I was born? You were registered as the child of an unknown father. Iris managed to care for you in the first years, but the sequelae of the treatments left her unstable, with episodes of amnesia and paranoia. Nathan hesitated. When you were 5 years old, she disappeared. You were found alone at a bus terminal in New Haven 3 days later. And what happened to her? Nobody knows. She simply disappeared. Emily collapsed into a chair, the weight of the revelations crushing. Her entire life had been a consequence of William Blackwood's crimes. Her mother had been shattered. She herself had grown up without identity, without family, carrying traumas she didn't even know where they came from. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, her voice hoarse. Because last night, when Richard introduced Dr. Martinez, I realized they know who you are. They're investigating your past, looking for ways to use this information against us. Against us or against you? Nathan knelt beside her chair, his intense blue eyes fixed on her face. Emily, I know I made mistakes. I know I should have told you everything from the beginning. But when I discovered your story, when I understood what my father had done to your family, he paused, choosing his words, I felt I had a debt to you, a chance to compensate for at least part of the harm my family caused. Compensate by using me as bait in a marriage farce? Compensate by offering you a better life, financial security, protection, the chance to discover who you really are. And what do you gain from this besides fulfilling the requirements of the will? The question hit him like a slap. Nathan looked away, his jaw contracted into a tense line. In the beginning, just that. Fulfilling the will, maintaining control of the company. He looked back at her. But after you came here, after I began to know you, I gained something I didn't know I wanted. What? A reason to wake up in the morning that wasn't anger or guilt. The raw vulnerability in his voice disarmed her. Even knowing that he had lied, even carrying the pain of the discoveries about her mother, she still felt something powerful stirring in her chest when she looked at him. Nathan, she began, but was interrupted by an urgent knock on the door. Mr. Blackwood? The voice of one of the staff sounded tense. Sorry to interrupt, but there are FBI men at the door. They say they have a search and seizure warrant. Nathan's blood froze. Warrant for what? Investigation into irregular activities at the St. Raphael Institute. They want access to all files related to Dr. William Blackwood. Emily and Nathan looked at each other, the same terrible understanding passing between them. Someone had reported the crimes of the past, and now the consequences were knocking at the door. I'll go down, Nathan said, his voice controlled but tense. Emily, go to your room and don't leave until I tell you to. Why? I haven't done anything wrong. Because you're the living proof of the crimes they're investigating, and there are people who would prefer that proof to disappear. The fear in his voice made her obey without questioning. Emily went up to her room, but left the door ajar to be able to hear the sounds coming from the lower floor. Male voices, heavy footsteps, the noise of furniture being moved. She approached the window and saw 3 FBI cars parked in the circular driveway. Uniformed agents were entering and leaving the house carrying boxes of documents. In the midst of them, she recognized the elegant figure of Richard Blackwood, animatedly conversing with a man in a dark suit. Richard had orchestrated all this. He was using the authorities to pressure Nathan, forcing a crisis that could give him control of the company. Son of a bitch, she muttered, watching Nathan's uncle smile as he watched the search. A soft knock on the door made her turn. It was one of the staff members, Maria, if she remembered correctly, with a worried expression. Mrs. Blackwood, the master asked me to give you this. She extended a sealed envelope. He said it was urgent. Emily opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an old key and a note in Nathan's angular handwriting. 3rd floor, last door on the right. The truth about Hannah is there. Be careful who you trust. N. 3rd floor. Emily didn't even know the mansion had a 3rd floor. She had never seen stairs that led beyond the 2nd floor. But as she listened to the chaos of the police search happening on the lower floor, she knew she needed to discover what other secrets that house was hiding. She waited until the noises were concentrated in the library and office before leaving the room. She walked through the corridors carefully, looking for a staircase or access that had gone unnoticed. It was in an alcove hidden behind a Persian tapestry that she found a discreet door, almost imperceptible in the wall. The key fit perfectly in the lock. On the other side was a narrow, dark wooden staircase that spiraled upward. The air was heavy, with the smell of mold and something else, something sweet and sickening that made her stomach turn. Emily climbed slowly, each step creaking under her feet. The 3rd floor was completely different from the rest of the mansion. Dark wooden walls, small windows that filtered little light, a long corridor with several closed doors. It seemed to belong to another century, another world. The last door on the right was locked with 3 different locks. Emily tested the key Nathan had given her, but it only opened the first one. The other 2 remained sealed, preventing her entry. Frustrated, she tried the other doors in the corridor. The 3rd opened easily, revealing a room that made her catch her breath. It was a teenager's room, preserved like a museum. Single bed with a pink bedspread, study desk full of books, walls covered with posters of 90s bands. But there was something disturbing about the perfect preservation, as if the owner had left just 5 minutes before. On the dresser, dozens of photographs of a girl who was almost identical to Nathan. Same blue eyes, same face shape, same smile that didn't reach the eyes. Hannah. Emily approached the photos, studying the face of the dead twin sister. In some images, Hannah smiled radiantly next to Nathan. 2 children playing in the garden, teenagers dressed up for Halloween, twins embracing in front of a Christmas tree. But in the more recent photos, there was something different in Hannah's expression, a deep sadness, a disconnection that jumped out of the images. She was beautiful, wasn't she? Emily turned abruptly, her heart racing. Nathan was standing at the door, still wearing the rumpled suit, his face tired, but with a dangerous intensity in his eyes. "How did you come up here without me hearing?" she asked. "There's a service staircase in the back. I use it when I don't want to be seen." He entered the room, closing the door behind him. "The police are gone, for now. Did they find anything?" "Enough to open a formal investigation. Institute files, my father's correspondence, financial records." Nathan walked to the window, looking at the garden below. Richard got what he wanted. "Now I'm officially a person of interest in a federal investigation. And what does that mean for us? It means our marriage will be scrutinized even more. Any sign that it's fake will be used as evidence that I'm trying to defraud the requirements of the will." Emily looked around Hannah's preserved room. "Is that why you brought me here? To show me that we need to continue pretending?" "I brought you here because you need to understand that this family's secrets go far beyond what was done to your mother." Nathan turned, facing her directly. "Hannah didn't die in an accident, Emily. She was murdered. The air left her lungs at once." "What?" "She discovered about the Institute's experiments, started investigating on her own, asking questions, threatening to expose everything." Nathan approached one of the photos, tracing his sister's face with a trembling finger. "On the night she died, she told me she had found evidence that our father was selling the memory suppression techniques to international cartels." Cartels? Criminal organizations that used the methods to erase memories of witnesses, kidnapping victims, anyone who could compromise their operations. His voice became lower, more dangerous. Hannah had names, dates, bank transfers. She was going to report everything the next morning. And someone killed her to prevent it. Someone who was in the house that night. Someone from the family. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "You suspect your uncle?" "Richard always knew about my father's business, always benefited from the profits, and always hated me for being the main heir." Nathan turned to her, blue eyes burning with an intensity that made her take a step back. "When Hannah died, he was the first to suggest it had been suicide. He pressed for there not to be an in-depth investigation. Why didn't you report your suspicions?" "Because I was a minor, I was in shock, and I had no concrete evidence." He laughed bitterly. "And because part of me believed that I was to blame for her death, that if I had paid more attention, if I had taken her concerns more seriously—" "Nathan, you were dealing with a trauma. You can't blame yourself for—" "I can, and I do." He approached her, so close that she could see the small scars on his skin that spoke of a difficult adolescence. "But now you're here, the daughter of the woman Hannah tried to avenge, and maybe together we can discover the truth." "What truth?" "About who really killed my sister. About what happened to your mother after she disappeared. About why Richard and Dr. Martinez are so interested in you." Nathan held her face between his hands, the touch burning her skin. "And about why, despite all the secrets and lies between us, I can't stop thinking that you're the piece that was missing in my life." Emily's heart raced. "Nathan, I know I lied to you. I know I used information about your past for my own ends, but you need to believe one thing." His thumbs traced the line of her jaw, a touch so gentle that it contrasted with the intensity of his eyes. "What I feel for you has nothing to do with guilt or compensation. It's real, it's frightening, and it's consuming me. How can I believe you after everything?" "Because you feel the same." It wasn't a question. "Because even knowing that I lied, even carrying the pain of what my family did to yours, you still look at me as if I were the most important person in the world." He was right, and that terrified her. Even knowing all the secrets, even carrying the anger for the betrayal, she still felt something powerful and uncontrollable when he touched her. "This is madness," she whispered. "Completely." He leaned in, resting his forehead on hers. "But it's our madness." The kiss that followed was different from all the previous ones. There was no performance, no audience, no contracts or rules. It was pure need, hunger, desperation, months of sexual tension finally finding release. Nathan pulled her against him forcefully, one hand on the back of her neck, the other on her back as if he wanted to fuse her to his own body. Emily responded with equal intensity, her arms entwining around his neck, completely forgetting where they were or why they shouldn't be doing this. When they separated, both were breathless, their eyes dark with desire. "Emily," he murmured against her lips, "if we don't stop now—" "I don't want to stop." The words escaped before she could think them through, but the moment she said them, she knew they were true. She didn't want to stop. She wanted to lose herself in him, forget all the secrets and betrayals. Feel alive for the first time in years. Are you sure? He studied her with eyes that promised sin and redemption in equal measure. Because if we do this, there will be no going back. I won't be able to pretend anymore that you're just a business contract. I was never just a business contract to you, she said, surprising herself with her own courage. Ever since that first day in the library, when you told me I complicated your rules. Nathan smiled, a genuine smile, devastating, that completely transformed his face. You complicated much more than my rules, Emily. You complicated my entire life. He kissed her again, this time with less urgency and more reverence, as if he were memorizing every sensation. His hands explored the curves of her body over her clothes, tracing paths that left trails of fire on her skin. Not here, he said against her lips. Not in her room. Emily nodded, understanding. Hannah might have been dead for 15 years, but her presence still lingered in that room like a blessing or a curse. Nathan took her by the hand and guided her out of the room, down the dark corridor, descending the spiral staircase. But instead of going to the second floor, he led her to a part of the house she had never seen, a lateral wing with huge windows that looked out onto the winter garden. My quarters, he explained, opening double doors. Nathan's bedroom was an extension of his personality, masculine, elegant, with a subtle sensuality that made her heart race. King-size bed with dark grey sheets, dark wood furniture, abstract artwork on the walls. Everything impeccably organized, but with personal details that revealed the man behind the mask. Books scattered on the bedside table, a framed photo of him and Hannah still as children, a coat casually thrown over an armchair. "Is this where you spend your sleepless nights?" she asked. "This is where I spend nights thinking about you," he answered with brutal honesty. Nathan approached slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But Emily didn't back away. Instead, she extended her hands and began to unbutton his shirt, trembling but determined fingers. "Emily," he whispered, covering her hands with his. "Are you sure? Because after this happens, I won't be able to let you go." "I don't want to go," she said, looking directly into his intense blue eyes. "I want to stay. I want to discover the truth about our pasts, and I want to discover what we are together when we stop pretending." His response came in the form of a kiss that made her completely forget to breathe. His hands rose to her face, fingers entwining in her dark hair, tilting her head to deepen the contact. His shirt fell to the floor, revealing a muscular chest marked by some scars that told stories she wanted to know. Emily traced the lines of his muscles with her fingertips, fascinated by the way he shivered under her touch. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his hands rising under her blouse, skin touching skin. "More beautiful than I have the right to deserve." "Nathan." "No." He silenced her with another kiss. "Let's not talk about deserving. Not now. Now we're just Nathan and Emily, two people who desire each other beyond reason." He was right. At that moment, there were no fake contracts, no family secrets, no guilt or betrayal. There were just the two of them, lost in a need that transcended logic. Her blouse joined his shirt on the floor. Nathan lifted her in his arms with impressive ease, carrying her to the bed as if she weighed nothing. He placed her gently on the dark sheets, stopping only to admire her. "Perfect," he said, his voice hoarse with desire. "Absolutely perfect." What followed was a slow and incendiary dance of mutual discovery. Hands exploring forbidden territories, lips tracing secret paths, whispers of pleasure that echoed in the silent room. Nathan touched her as if she were made of crystal and fire, with reverence and passion, care and intensity. When they finally united, it was with an intensity that surprised them. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, as if two halves had finally found their whole. "Emily," Nathan moaned her name like a prayer, his eyes fixed on hers even at the height of passion. "My Emily." And at that moment, she was, completely, irrevocably his, as he was hers. Afterwards, lying intertwined in the tangled sheets with the golden light of late afternoon filtering through the windows, Emily traced small circles on Nathan's sweaty chest. "And now?" she asked. "Now we discover the truth," he answered, kissing the top of her head. "About Hannah, about your mother, about everything. Together. And if the truth is worse than we imagine, then we'll face it together." Nathan pulled her closer, as if he wanted to protect her from all the dangers of the world. Because now you're not just my fake wife, Emily. You're my ally, my partner, my... Your what? My salvation, he said simply. Outside, night was beginning to fall over New York, bringing with it the promises and threats of a new chapter in their lives. There were dangers waiting. Richard and his plans, the federal investigation, the secrets they had yet to discover. But at that moment, in each other's arms, Nathan and Emily were invincible. United not just by a fake contract, but by something much more powerful and dangerous. They were in love, and that changed everything. Hours later, when Nathan thought she was sleeping, Emily heard him whisper in the dark, "I love you, Emily Warren Blackwood, and I won't let anyone hurt you." She didn't respond, but a small smile curved her lips. Because for the first time in her life, she knew exactly who she was. She was the woman Nathan Blackwood loved, and that was all she needed to know for now. But downstairs, a phone was ringing insistently, bringing news that would threaten everything they had just discovered. Emily woke to the persistent sound of a phone ringing somewhere distant in the mansion. She was nestled against Nathan's chest, his breathing deep and regular against her hair. The light filtered through the curtains indicated it was already morning, but she didn't want to move, didn't want to break the bubble of intimacy and safety they had created. The night before, for the first time since she could remember, she had felt complete. Not just physically satisfied, but emotionally filled in a way she didn't know was possible. Nathan had made love to her with an intensity that transcended the physical, as if each touch, each kiss, each whisper was a promise of protection and eternal devotion. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood," his husky voice murmured against her ear, sending delicious shivers down her skin. "Good morning, husband." She turned in his arms, finding blue eyes that seemed lighter in the morning light. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I've slept in 15 years. He lightly kissed the tip of her nose. "And you?" "Perfectly." Emily traced the strong line of his jaw with a finger. "Nathan, about last night. You don't regret it, I hope." "No. But I worry about what it means for us, for the agreement, for everything." Nathan propped himself up on his elbow, looking at her with a seriousness that made her heart race. "It means there is no more agreement, Emily. No more fake contracts or performances for the media. There's just the two of us, figuring out how to navigate this together. And the company? The will? We'll find another way. But I'm not going to pretend anymore that my feelings for you are part of a business game." He held her face between his hands. "I love you, Emily. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way that frightens me and completes me at the same time." The words hit her like a wave of heat. "I love you too," she whispered. "Despite all the secrets, despite all the confusion, I love you." The kiss that followed was interrupted by the urgent sound of hurried footsteps in the corridor. A hard knock on the door made them separate abruptly. "Mr. Blackwood." The voice of David, the head of security, sounded tense. "I need to speak with you urgently." Nathan got up quickly, putting on pajama pants. "What happened?" "There was an incident during the night, sir. Someone broke into the 3rd floor." Emily felt her blood freeze. The 3rd floor, where Hannah's room was, where the family's deepest secrets were. "What do you mean, broke in?" Nathan opened the door just a crack, but enough for Emily to hear everything. "The security cameras recorded movement around 3 in the morning. When we checked this morning, we found the door to the staircase forced open and several rooms ransacked." "The locked room?" "Intact, sir. It seems they couldn't open it. But Miss Hannah's room..." Nathan went rigid. "What about the room?" "It was completely searched. Drawers open, papers scattered, photographs. Some are missing." Emily saw Nathan clench his fists. His jaw contracted into a dangerous line. "Review all security. I want to know how someone got in here without triggering alarms." "Yes, sir. And there's one more thing." "What?" "We found this on the desk in the room." David extended an envelope. "It was positioned in a way that would certainly be seen." Nathan took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. There was no identification on the outside, just his name written in handwriting that he clearly recognized because he instantly went pale. "Leave us alone," he said to David, closing the door. "Nathan, what is it?" Emily approached, wearing only his dress shirt from the night before. "The handwriting," he whispered. "It's Hannah's." "That's impossible. She died. 15 years ago, I know." But his hands trembled when he opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. "Nathan, If you're reading this, it means you've finally started looking for the truth. She didn't die. She can't die. Come to the abandoned chapel on Westchester County Road, mile 47, today at 11 p.m. Come alone. Trust only Emily. The paper fell from his hands, floating to the floor like a dead leaf. Emily picked it up, reading the impossible words. Nathan, this is some kind of cruel prank. No. His voice was strange, distant. I know this handwriting. I know the way she made the capital H, how she connected the words. No one else could imitate it with such perfection. But you yourself said she was murdered. I said I thought she had been murdered. But what if... He stopped, running his hands through his hair. What if she faked her own death? What if she found a way to escape? Emily felt the world spinning around her. But the body, the funeral. There was an accident in the pool. The body was submerged for hours before being found. It was disfigured. My father insisted on having a closed casket funeral, said it would be more dignified. Are you suggesting that your father... My father could have helped Hannah fake her own death to protect her, or to protect her secrets about the Institute. Nathan started pacing back and forth, his brain processing possibilities. If Hannah discovered about the experiments, if she had evidence that could destroy everything, then Richard and the others would have motives to really kill her. Exactly. And my father, as bad as he was still her father. He may have chosen to save her life even if it meant letting everyone believe she was dead. Emily looked at the letter again. And if it's a trap? If Richard discovered about Hannah and is using this to lure you? It's possible. Nathan got dressed quickly. But I need to go. If there's the slightest possibility that my sister is alive, then we'll go together. No. He turned to her, his eyes intense. It's too dangerous if it's a trap. The letter says to trust only me. That means she, whoever wrote this, wants me to be involved. Emily approached, holding his hands. Nathan, you've spent 15 years carrying guilt for her death. If there's a chance to discover the truth, you won't face this alone. He remained silent for a long moment, studying her determined face. If we go, we do it my way. With all possible security. I agree. And if it really is Hannah, you need to be prepared to hear things that might change everything you think about me, about this family. Nathan, after everything I've already discovered, do you think anything can shock me even more? He smiled sadly. You surprise me every day, Emily Blackwood. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Nathan cancelled all meetings, claiming health problems, while David discreetly reinforced the mansion's security. Emily tried to maintain normalcy, but couldn't stop thinking about the letter and what it might mean. In the afternoon, while Nathan was in the office coordinating preparations for the night, she decided to explore the third floor more. The night invasion had been too specific. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for. She went up the secret staircase, noticing the signs of the invasion. The broken door had been temporarily repaired, but there were still crowbar marks on the wood. The corridor seemed gloomier than the day before, loaded with tension. Hannah's room was in controlled disorder. Whoever had been there had looked for something specific. Drawers opened with surgical precision, books leafed through but not destroyed, photographs reorganized as if someone were cataloging information. Emily approached the desk where the letter had been left. Among the scattered papers, she found fragments that caught her attention. Pages torn from a diary, with the same delicate handwriting as the letter. March 15th, 1998. I discovered where Dad hides the real Institute files. They're not just medical experiments. It's something much worse. He's selling the techniques to people who use them to erase crimes, eliminate witnesses. I need to tell Nathan, but I fear he won't believe me. March 22, 1998. Richard knows that I know. I saw him talking to that disgusting doctor, Martinez. They talked about solving the Hannah problem permanently. I need to find a way out. March 25th, 1998. Dad came to see me today. He said he discovered Richard's plans. He offered a terrible solution. Fake my death to protect me, give me a new identity far from here. He said it's the only way to keep me alive. I don't know if I trust him, but I don't have a choice either. The pages ended abruptly. Emily felt a chill down her spine when she realized that the last entry was just 2 days before Hannah's supposed death. Found something interesting? She turned abruptly, her heart racing. Nathan was standing at the door, but there was something different in his posture, in his expression. A tension that wasn't there before. Pages from her diary, Emily said, showing the fragments. Nathan, look at the dates. She knew she was in danger. And your father. My father may have saved her life. He approached, reading the pages over her shoulder. This changes everything. How so? If Hannah is alive, if she spent the last 15 years hiding somewhere, then she may have the evidence we need to destroy Richard and everyone involved in the Institute's crimes. Emily nodded, but something in his voice made her uneasy. Nathan, are you okay? You seem different. It's the possibility of reuniting with my sister after so long. It's a lot to process. He lightly kissed her temple. Let's go downstairs. I need to check the final security details for tonight. But as they descended the stairs, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Nathan was hiding something from her. There was a tension in his movements, a formality in the way he spoke that reminded her of the first day they met. At night, they departed for the meeting place in 2 cars. Nathan drove the first, with Emily beside him, while David and 2 security guards followed at a discreet distance. Westchester County Road was dark and practically deserted, only the headlights cutting through the closed night. Nathan, Emily said when they were already close to the location, I need to tell you something. What is it? Today in the afternoon when you were in the office, I received a strange call. He slowed down, visibly tensing. What kind of call? A woman, low, whispering voice. She only said, be careful who you trust, Emily. Not all the dead are really dead, and not all the living are worthy of trust. Nathan stopped the car abruptly on the shoulder. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I thought it could be a prank, someone trying to scare us, but now with this letter from Hannah, Emily, this changes everything. If someone is trying to manipulate the situation, use the possibility of Hannah being alive as bait. Do you think we shouldn't go? Nathan remained silent for a long moment, the car engine purring softly in the night. No, we've come this far. I need to know the truth, even if it's painful. They started driving again, but now there was a palpable tension in the air. The abandoned chapel appeared at the next curve, a small and deteriorated construction surrounded by tall trees that almost completely blocked the moonlight. There's a car parked behind the chapel, Emily observed. I see. David is positioned. If anything goes wrong, he'll act. They got out of the car slowly, Nathan keeping Emily slightly behind him. The chapel door was ajar, a faint light emanating from the interior. Hannah, Nathan called, his voice echoing in the silence. If you're there, I came. A figure emerged from the shadows of the chapel's interior. It was a woman with dark hair, wearing a long coat that hid her silhouette. In the penumbra, it was difficult to distinguish her features. Nathan. The voice was soft, familiar, but with a ghostly quality that made Emily shiver. You came. Hannah? He took a step forward, his voice broken with emotion. Is it really you? The woman approached slowly, coming out of the shadows. When the light fell on her face, Emily caught her breath. It was Hannah, older, with expression lines that spoke of difficult years, but unmistakably Nathan's twin sister. Hi, bro, she said, and there were tears in her eyes. Nathan ran towards her, enveloping her in a desperate embrace. I thought you were dead. All these years I carried guilt. I know, forgive me for that. There was no other way. Emily observed the emotional reunion, but something bothered her. Hannah seemed genuine. The tears and emotion seemed real, but there was something in the way she moved, how she looked around, that suggested extreme caution. How did you survive? Nathan asked, still holding his sister's hands. How did you fake your death? Dad helped me. When he discovered that Richard and Martinez were planning to kill me, he arranged everything. An unidentified body from the morgue, falsification of documents, a new identity. Hannah looked at Emily for the first time. And this must be Emily. Yes. How did you know? I know many things, Nathan. I've spent 15 years observing, investigating, collecting evidence. Hannah approached Emily, studying her face with a disturbing intensity. You're even more like me than I expected. Like you? We're cousins, Emily. Iris Warren was the daughter of my grandfather's brother. That makes you and Nathan distant relatives. Emily's world spun. What are you saying? That nothing in this situation was coincidence. Nathan didn't choose you just because you looked like me. He chose you because our family always knew you existed, always planned to bring you back when it was convenient. Nathan went livid. Hannah, what are you talking about? Oh, bro, did you really think you could fool me? Hannah laughed, but the sound had no joy. Did you think I wouldn't know that you've been working with Richard for months? That this whole fake marriage, this whole investigation about the Institute, is part of a plan to make me come out of hiding? That's not true, Nathan exploded. Hannah, I love you. I spent 15 years suffering thinking you were dead, and I spent 15 years discovering that our family is even worse than I imagined. Hannah moved away from him, her hand going for something in the coat pocket. Discovering that you always knew where I was, always had a way to contact me but chose to leave me in exile. I didn't know. I swear by everything sacred I didn't know. Emily watched the argument with growing horror. There was truth in Nathan's pain, but also something in Hannah's accusations that sounded frighteningly plausible. Nathan, she said softly, tell me she's lying. He turned to her, and in the blue eyes she had learned to love, she saw something that made her heart shatter. Guilt. Emily, I can explain. My God. The words came out in a whisper. It's true, isn't it? You knew. Not the way she's saying. I discovered 3 months ago that Hannah might be alive, but I wasn't sure, didn't know how. 3 months ago, Emily repeated, doing the math. Exactly when you started looking for a fake wife. Emily, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you used me not just to fulfill the will, but as bait to attract your sister. That everything, the marriage, the revelations about my mother, even last night, everything was calculated. Hannah watched the discussion with a sad expression. I'm sorry, Emily, you didn't deserve to be used this way. No, Nathan shouted, desperate. Emily, I swear what I feel for you is real. It may have started as a plan, but it transformed into something much bigger. Liar. The voice of a new person cut through the night like a blade. Everyone turned to see Richard Blackwood coming out of the shadows, accompanied by 3 armed men. Uncle Richard, Nathan said, his voice lethal. I should have guessed you would be involved. Oh, my dear nephew, I'm more than involved. I orchestrated all of this. Richard smiled, a cruel and triumphant expression. The police investigation, the pressure from the board, even this touching family reunion. How? Hannah was never really hidden, Nathan. She has been my partner for the last 15 years. She faked her own death, yes, but not to escape from me, to work with me. Emily felt the ground collapse beneath her feet. What is he saying? Hannah sighed, pulling a gun from her coat pocket. That I was never the victim in this story, Emily. I was always the predator. The truth exploded in Emily's mind like a bomb. Hannah had not been murdered. She had not been a victim of the experiments. She had been an accomplice. You two, she whispered, looking between Hannah and Richard. You two planned everything.